Hey, what's up, guys? Today we're going to be talking about demand. This is what I've learned from my macroeconomics and microeconomics classes so far. I'm a freshman. They're introductory courses, but really, truly, it's not too hard. It's very foundational stuff. Why am I doing this? It's because, man, I love economics, bro. Like, this is like some of the most interesting stuff I've been learning, like throughout like high school, middle school, now college, right? But this stuff is fascinating. And I believe that the best way to, understand something is if you're able to teach it, right? And by practicing teaching it, I start to, learn stuff that, maybe didn't know, like gaps in my knowledge. So that's the main reason why I'm doing this. Yeah. So demand versus quantity demanded. There's a real difference, but what is it? First, let's look at demand. It's this red line. So let's say we're McDonald's and we have this competition, this substitute good Wendy's, right? Last week we both sold nearly identical burgers for $8, right? Now this week, Wendy's lowered the price to 5. So, at $8, we were able to sell 100 Big Macs, right? This was last week. But this week, we're trying to sell them at $8, but people don't want them at $8. They're only willing to buy 50 Big Macs now because the price of a substitute good, a nearly identical Wendy's burger, that price went down. So the main point I'm trying to say is demand is how much you want something, how much the consumer wants something, right? And it's the entire line that shifts. So, but what shifts it? What causes this magic? Well, it's everything other than the price of a product. So we're going to go into related goods, change in taste, number of buyers, expectations of future prices, and income of buyers. So, related goods. McDonald's and Wendy's, they're advertised different, but they're truly the same thing, right? So if Wendy's decides to, undercut all their prices, people will be flocking to Wendy's. But since the price of a substitute good, because they're substitutes for each other, basically interchangeable, demand for McDonald's will go down. But, if Wendy's starts jacking up all their prices, people are going to look at McDonald's and be like, oh, maybe it's not so bad. People who would have bought Wendy's, go to McDonald's. And there are also complementary goods, right? Let's say I'm a big hot dog guy, but I can only eat hot dogs if they have ketchup. If the price of ketchup skyrockets, I don't want to buy as many hot dogs because, I can only enjoy them with the complementary good. That's not to say that you need complementary goods in order to use them at the same time. You can definitely eat hot dogs separately from ketchup. It's just a fun example. Next, there's change in taste. So there are things like fads, right? In 2016, demand for fidget spinners rose. It's because, people just wanted to spin it around, right? But, in the years afterwards, people thought, oh, it's just a lame toy, we're over it. So demand went down. But tomorrow morning, if we all woke up and decided, hey, I want to buy a car that's pink with polka dots on it. Nobody can stop me. This is the exact car I want, and everybody thinks like this, right? So there's a change in taste, there's a change of preference. So demand for pink and white polka dot cars goes up. And then number of buyers. So let's think about housing real quick. So if about 51,000 people are moving into Texas, there's going to be an increase of demand of housing. these people aren't gonna live on the streets. They don't want to do that. Instead, the demand for housing increases, right? Or you can think about the opposite, right? If everybody decides to move out of Dallas, Texas, demand for, you know, the Dallas Mavericks tickets would decline because there's nobody there to buy it, you know? Then there's expectations of future prices. So earlier today, I was driving, I saw that gas prices were $3.60 a gallon. Now that's outrageous. Like a month ago it was like $2.15. But if I look at the $3.60 at Kroger, right? And I believe that tomorrow it's gonna be $4, I'm gonna wanna buy it at $3.60 right now. So my demand of gas would go up because I think, the price in the future is gonna be real expensive. Similarly, if I think RAM in the next 6 months is going to get cheaper, maybe I won't buy a bunch of PC parts right now. My demand would decrease. So when I think the prices are lower, that's when I buy it. And then there's the income of buyers, right? So I'm a broke college kid, right? There's barely $100 to my name. I eat a bunch of just like cheap ramen. That's fine for me. But let's say I did an internship, a paid internship, in fact. It pays me something crazy like $1,000 a week. So my demand for, real fancy ramen, that goes up because I can afford it now. And all this cheap stuff, it was fine, but it wasn't that good. But my demand for this cheap stuff would go down. Now, this can be considered an inferior good. This would be considered a normal, maybe even a superior good if you really want to stretch how much you like ramen. And so let's go into inferior, normal, and superior, also known as luxury goods. So inferior is like that grade value stuff. It's the single ply toilet paper. I need this for my everyday life, or maybe it's something small that makes me happy, but it's not the highest quality stuff, okay? Like there are better alternatives out there, I just can't afford it. That's where we get into something like Frosted Flakes. I'm a huge fan of Frosted Flakes. If I'm making good enough money, I'm gonna eat Frosted Flakes for breakfast. So that's like a normal good. A superior or luxury good would be something like the dentist, right? So, Frosted Flakes, if my income rises by 10%, I'm gonna buy maybe 10% more of Frosted Flakes. But, if I'm working for $60,000 a year and I go to the dentist once, then I get a crazy raise to $100,000, right? I'm not gonna suddenly start going to the dentist 2/3 more often, right? It's kind of stupid. I might be able to afford to go 2, 3, maybe even 4 times a year, because that's considered a superior good. My demand for that outraces my demand. Sorry, my demand for a luxury good outraces the raise in income. Yeah. Then there's quantity demand, and this is a whole different thing. We're looking at the red line, and we're looking about movements along the red line. So if I'm selling, a cup of coffee for $10, maybe 5 people walk into my store and buy it. If I'm selling a cup of coffee for $5, maybe 10 people walk it. 3, maybe 14. Here's just a little table I drew for quantity demanded, right? Blah. And this studies shifts along the demand curve, right? So it's not moving left and right, we're going up and down. So this is all about the price. This is all about money, right? Shoot. So, sorry, I had a massive brain fart, but quantity demanded is all about price. Let's say your cologne is $100 a bottle, right? I might only buy one or two, but then the price decreases to like 20 bucks a bottle. I'm buying a lot more cologne because I wanna smell different on different days, right? So that's quantity demanded, quantity demand. It's just going up and down that demand line. But something we do have to talk about while talking about demand is the law of diminishing returns. This is important, right? So let's say I order a small McDonald's fries, right? And that makes me pretty happy. I like French fries. But as I get more and more French fries, right? If I have a mountain of fries, each French fry isn't gonna make me as happy as the small McDonald's fry, right? So my happiness per fry over here is a lot less than my happiness per fry over here. And that's a Google definition. You can read it if you want, I guess. But yeah. Anyways, to recap, demand is how much you want something. It goes left and right, or diagonal if you want to think about it. Quantity demanded goes along the curve. Thank you. Sorry if I got anything wrong. I probably slipped over my words or something. Yeah. Love you, bye.